was going to say, it doesn't look like the road's coming, so.
I don't think I have. Yeah.
He didn't say anything, so.
I forget things, but I think I would have forgotten.
Well, I don't think you forgot that. He said it wasn't coming. So, just play whatever for offering and postlude, and just pick something.
And Dolly is probably with family, I suspect.
Yeah, I think that's.
Boy's not coming today.
We don't know.
It's true.
Hope he's okay.
Yeah.
That's strange.
It's not like, if he's not gonna be here, it's not like him enough to say something. It's not.
Are we ready?
Yes, we're ready. Even Kenny's not here.
Keep going.
Keep going, even Kenny's not here.
You want me to move that for you?
No, that's all right. Welcome to First Universalist Avenue, Madison, on this cold winter day. We have any announcements?
I would just announce that next week we have been invited by the El Dorado congregation to attend our annual union service. So all the church, we will not have service here in New Madison, but at El Dorado, the church service will begin at 10:30, and the good people at El Dorado are serving us lunch following the service.
Right. 10:30 El Dorado next week. So this church will not be open. Somebody, if I remember, will put a sign up on the door that says we're meeting in El Dorado. And if you come here at 10, you've got plenty of time to get there by 10:30. It is a carry-in, but they've emphasized that they are providing everything. So I don't think they would not let you bring something, but it's not required that you bring something. So if you have something favorite that you like, then feel free. We're operating with a skeleton crew today. I think that's partially because of the weather, and I have to say, New Carlisle, where my wife is preaching, is operating on a skeleton crew. They are Facebook only. They have 8 members of their congregation have come down with COVID. They had 65 people in worship last week, and out of the 65, 8 of them have come down with either the flu, the winter flu. I think 2 of them are actually just a winter flu and negative for COVID, but the others are actually COVID positive. And 2 of them were like 90 years old, have been there for generations and generations, were in the hospital. But she found out yesterday that they've both been released from the hospital. So being vaccinated and double vaccinated and triple vaccinated, I think it helped. So keep that in mind. You still need to wear your mask when you go out in public. I know it doesn't seem to be very prevalent in Dark County, but the flu season is upon us, and COVID is still there, and it's still killing people. So, all right. We just heard We Gather Together, and our chalice lighting is on Threshold. This is by Florence Caplow. Sunlight streams through a rounded window. We kindle this flame, honoring the doorways in our souls. the windows through which we gaze at one another, the balconies where we catch glimpses of the sky, the thresholds we stand on this morning, wondering, hoping, fearing, and dreaming. Our opening hymn is number 68, Come Ye Thankful People, and we are approaching Thanksgiving. It'll be before we meet again next Sunday, so we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. We are finishing with Roberta what we had started 2 weeks ago on Lincoln. So your slideshow is going to be primarily on Lincoln with a little bit of local content. Come ye thankful people. All right. Our affirmation, Churches Are Helpers by Martha Dallas. Have you ever wondered how it came to be that churches are known as places where you can get a helping hand if you need one? It seems to me that a key source of the charitable nature of churches goes all the way back to the time of Christ. You see, in the society in which Christ lived in his time and place, things were very unfair and unjust. Things haven't changed much, have they? And at that time, there were few people at the top who were rich and powerful, and there were a bunch of people at the bottom. And these were the people who were hungry, thirsty, and poor. They were homeless, sick, and disabled. And in that society, the people at the bottom were considered to be untouchable. It was thought that the people who needed these kinds of help were so much at the bottom that if you even touched one of them, you risked becoming an untouchable yourself. There were even rules and codes to follow to make sure that the classes of society remained safely separated from each other. And you know what Jesus thought about this? He absolutely believed it was wrong. He rejected this unfair society with people on the bottom who were considered untouchable. He preached against it, and what's more, he acted against it. He deliberately hung out with the untouchable people. And what's more, he touched them. In fact, there are stories of Jesus' healing touch, touching all these people at the bottom whom society told him not to touch. Jesus showed these people mercy, compassion, and love, and the stories of his healing touch have come down through the centuries to us. The Gospels that speak about Jesus and the early church that emerged took this part of Christ's message to heart. The church believed that if someone is thirsty, you should give them something to drink. If you find someone who's hungry, you offer them food. If you see someone who is poor, give them some money so they can buy what they need. For people who are homeless, offer them shelter. With those who are sick, help them get medicine and treatment for their illness. And for people with disabilities, offer them a helping hand so that they can get around in the world. Following Christ's example, this is what the church has worked to do. Let me get my pages apart. Because when you see someone who has a need for help and you decide to offer them the kind of help that they need, that is God right there. When you offer a helping hand to someone who needs it, you allow a little bit of heaven to shine right here on earth, and that's what we are doing today. I've taken some stuff to the food pantry in Greenville. They are most appreciative. And I found out, because some of the stuff was expired, they will take expired foods as long as it's in the can and the can looks good, up to 18 months past its expiration date. So they know what everyone else is supposed to know, that the expiration date is an arbitrary date that people put on their food. It has nothing to do with it. If you read the list, canned goods are usually good for 2 to 3 to 4 years after they're stamped for the expiration date. Obviously, if you see a canned good with the can is bulging, don't eat that. And obviously, things like cereal or dried goods or breads, they don't last near as long. But even bread, as our after church service testimony is a testimony too, everything I buy is from the day old cheap table, and it still is real edible. So. All right, we're going to do our Lincoln thing because Roberta is with us, and she's going to finish her Lincoln and the Lincoln booth and the spiritualist thing. Very interesting, and we're going to hear the conclusion of that. I have some extra stuff that I picked up. This is a picture of Mr. Booth. He was an actor, if you didn't know that, and his brother Edwin Booth was an actor. And I'm going to throw this in a little bit early. This is Edwin Booth over here, and this is Robert Todd Lincoln, Lincoln's only surviving son. Edwin Booth saved Robert Todd Lincoln's life. In 1865, they were standing at a train station. Someone bumped Robert Lincoln, and he was like 25 or 26 at the time. He fell down onto the tracks right in front of a train. Edwin Booth was there, grabbed him by the collar and pulled him out and saved his life. The connections between the Lincolns and the Booths are they're too much for coincidence. You have to wonder what is going on with the situation. Robert Todd Lincoln didn't die until 1913, I think. So think about how short a distance that is, the connection with Lincoln and us. His Lincoln's son didn't die until 1913. That's within generations of where we are now. So, our children's story is also Lincoln. And let's see if we can pull it up. And we aren't going to get it. No, everything is being wonky today. Ah, there it came. If it will come up. The children's story, which is not recorded or didn't come out the way it should, is Lincoln's beard. Lincoln did not have a beard when he started running for Congress. 90% of the people running, or 90% of the men in the 1800s, the early 1800s, had facial hair. Some of it was that kind of strange facial hair. Do you ever remember the pictures of General Burnside? Sideburns that came down, made a big loop into his mustache and went across and came out the other side. I had a picture of that too, which I can't bring up. So let's see if we can. Actually, I wonder if I can go back to, well, I'm not gonna do it. So everybody had facial hair. Lincoln did not have facial hair. A little girl, Grace, 10 years old, wrote him a letter and said, I would vote for you if I could vote, not only because she was 10 years old, but because women couldn't vote in the 1800s. My dad will vote for you no matter what, but my brother, I'm sure, would vote for you if you had a beard. Everybody in our family has a beard. And if you would grow a beard, I think I can get more votes for you. This is a 10-year-old girl named Grace wrote this to Lincoln. Lincoln actually wrote her back and said, thank you for your kind letter, Grace. I realize, and you heard the thing about Stephen Douglas during their debate called Lincoln two-faced. And Lincoln replied, do you think if I had another face, I would be wearing this one? So he grew a beard, and that became the Lincoln that we know and the Lincoln that we realize. And the picture that will come up for some reason is a picture of the progression of Lincoln and his beard. And we'll see it. All right. The other thing, we might as well do that now, is Scott Trostel. Does anybody know who Scott Trostel is? He's an author from Bradford, Ohio. Wrote a lot about the Bradford Railroad Station. He also wrote a definitive story on the transfer, or on the Lincoln funeral train. Did you know that the Lincoln funeral train went through, it came from Pennsylvania, went to Columbus, went to Greenville, went to New Madison, went to New Paris, went to Richmond, and then went on to Indianapolis, and then on to Springfield. There's a sign which is right here at the library commemorating the Lincoln funeral train, which passed through New Madison, April 15th, 1865 at 2 o'clock in the morning. There were crowds of people at 2 o'clock in the morning waiting for the train to go by, many singing hymns, many kneeling with candles and praying. The train only traveled at 20 miles an hour, so everyone had a chance to spend some time with the funeral car, which they described the funeral car, Scott Trostel did, as the plane that the presidents fly on now with railroad car wheels. I mean, it was that fancy and that setup of a car. That's the car that Lincoln was in, and that car is still in a museum. I think it's in Springfield, I'm not sure where. The train then went to New Paris and then on to Richmond. You can see the route goes down 121. I tried to get a picture of it, but I was too late last night and didn't have time this morning. If you look off to the right as you're heading toward Richmond, you'll see an old railroad embankment, which is raised up to make it level. In many places, that's been torn down and leveled off so the farmers can farm the fields, but in many places that embankment is still there. That is the route that Lincoln's train traveled on. There's no sign of it left in New Madison, and there's no sign of it left in New Paris. But if you go out in the country, you'll find bridges that are still left. If you go from New Paris to Richmond on 121 on the left-hand side where the creek is, you'll see old iron bridges. Those were the railroad bridges that railroad traveled on. So,
Tim, did you say there's a sign here in town about the...
Right in front of the library.
In front of the library.
Yes, the sign that you can see here is commemorating the passage of Lincoln's funeral train, and this is the funeral car, as the picture at the top. There's going to be another one in Greenville eventually, and another one, I forget where the third one is going to be. The Historical Society is erecting these. So be sure, and if you're in New Madison, stop and see the signs. It's interesting. And a little bit of history close to us. I can look out my front window, and I can see the train tracks, or where the train tracks used to be before they tore up the embankment. So, all right. Actually, we've led right into Lincoln and Booth and the Spirit. If you're ready, we'll see what else I have.
Ready?
Ah, there it is. Lincoln, April 13, 1860, November 25th, 1860 it started, and that's the final in February of 1861. His beard is almost complete.
You remember some from 2 weeks ago when I started with Throngs of Unseen People. David Reynolds wrote this piece out of Jeff sent this paper from somewhere, I don't know where. And I have a word written at the bottom, theosophy, religious speculation dealing with mystical apprehension of God. Does anybody know what theosophy is? Mike, I'll bet you do. You're nodding your head. I never had heard that word. Okay. A nationwide spiritualist convention held in Chicago in August 1864, when President Lincoln's prospects for re-election seemed dim. This spiritualist convention passed resolutions backing Lincoln's anti-slavery war effort in the firmest terms. Lincoln alone, the convention affirmed, had the moral fiber to lead the war to end slavery, in the words of one of its resolutions. Abraham Lincoln stands before, this is one of the resolutions, Abraham Lincoln stands before this nation and before all of Europe as the political embodiment of the spirit and principle of freedom and free institutions, and as the political representative of the anti-slavery sentiment of the nation. Lincoln's critics, on the other hand, sharply attacked him because of his alleged devotion to spiritualism. Alford, the author of all this, notes the hostility vented by the Ohio attorney David Quinn, who in 1863 wrote, quote, "Mr. Lincoln is not only a spiritualist of the abolitionist school, but is and has been, from the beginning of his term, directing the war under the direction of spirit rappings. There was a secret, quote, rapping table in the White House, they claimed, where the president received advice from Caesar, Washington, Jefferson, Napoleon, and Andrew Jackson." What Alford, the author, doesn't mention is that criticism like Quinn's was part of an avalanche of attacks on Lincoln by Southerners and anti-war Democrats in the North who counted spiritualism among the evil isms that Lincoln and his fellow Republicans supposedly espoused. Just as today, when epithets like radical socialist and fascist are traded by political opponents, so in the Civil War era, both sides engaged in mudslinging. Especially rabid were defendants of slavery. A Confederate political cartoon pictured anti-slavery Republicans swarming around a religious altar that featured an image of Lincoln and was made up of stones representing nefarious northern movements. One stone was labeled spirit rapping, and others included socialism, free love, and Negro worship. In 1864, a typical Lincoln critic wrote, "It is well known that the infidels, atheists, free thinkers, free lovers, spiritualists, and progressive Christians have always been ardent admirers of Mr. Lincoln and his policy." Another alarmed commentator wrote, "Has it come to this? A great country governed by ghosts, spirits, hobgoblins, table turnings, rappings, etc. Be not deceived. This is the nimbus of the administration." A belief that the country was controlled by hobgoblins and spirits sounds bizarre, but no more so than current conspiracy theories, such as the claim that an international pedophile ring is trying to subvert a former U.S. president. To Alford's credit, he treats spiritualism with the same even-handedness that Lincoln did. For instance, he tells of Lincoln's genial response to Belle Miller, who sat with Mary Lincoln more than any other medium. One of Belle's stunts was playing the piano under the influence of spirits who made the instrument pitch back and forth. You mentioned the piano, pitching back and forth. So Lincoln once sat at the White House piano. He banged away at it and shoved it around with his knees. He turned to his wife Mary and said, "See?" He says, "See, Mother? Our piano can dance too." And he called her Mother. Alford, the author, ranges widely into the personal backgrounds of Lincoln and the Booth family, opening new vistas on both. His book is made up of many interwoven threads: neglected biographical facts, events of the Civil War, and acting styles, connected in various ways to superstition or the afterlife. Alford tells us of the mentally unstable Junius Brutus Booth, who once exhumed the corpse of a daughter, cut open a vein in her arm, and tried to suck out impure blood in the hope of reviving her. The author Alford also follows the lives of the journalist Adam Badeau and the Boston Brahmin Richard Carey, close friends of Edwin Booth. Badeau at first rejected spiritualism, but then embraced it when he became convinced that otherworldly forces had overtaken him during a seance. Alford also provides a moving account of Carey's death in a Civil War battle and Edwin's struggles to cope with the loss through the aid of mediums. Alford's portrayal of John Wilkes Booth is interestingly complex. On the one hand, he takes note of Booth's cruel streak. As a boy, he took pleasure in killing cats or torturing them or tying them together in a way that caused severe pain. This behavior, Alford writes, allowed, quote, a lack of common compassion, and it boded ill. Repeated, it is a likely precursor of later violent behavior by an adult. On the other hand, he informs us, Booth had a high regard for dogs, horses, and even insects, such as butterflies and katydids, which he tried to protect. Although he had bouts of gloom, he was capable of great joy. He told his sister, "How glorious it is to live, how divine, to breathe this breath of life with a clear mind and healthy lungs. Don't let us be sad. Life is so short and the world is so beautiful." This is not the kind of language that we would expect from the murderer of a president. How was this man capable of killing Lincoln? One point to Booth's political views, which were intensely reactionary. He called slavery one of the greatest blessings for both blacks and whites that God ever bestowed on a favored nation. He loathed abolitionism and regarded Lincoln as a dangerous leader whose reflection would install him as a tyrant for life. No, his re-election, excuse me. That Lincoln's re-election would install him as a tyrant for life. There were then no presidential term limits. Ironically, Lincoln, who often attended the theater, admired Booth's acting. Booth, repeatedly urged by a fellow actor to visit the president in his theater box, rejected that idea. A contemporary wrote, Booth said that he would rather have the applause of a Negro than that of Lincoln. But such pro-slavery venom was often spewed at Lincoln, who received so many threats that he had a folder of letters on his desk marked A for assassination. What explains the persistence of Booth, who obsessively plotted against Lincoln for months? The answer seems to lie in Alford's perception that Booth came to identify with, quote, heroes of resistance to autocratic rule that he played on stage, such as Brutus, the nobleman in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, who conspires against the would-be Roman emperor, and William Tell, the Swiss huntsman who in Friedrich Schiller's play of that name kills an oppressive governor. Booth didn't just relate to such assassins whom he impersonated on stage, and in fact he became one of them. When in 1864 he quit acting and committed himself to political terrorism, America itself became his stage and Lincoln was his targeted tyrant. Even Booth's most private thoughts, as recorded in a diary he kept while he was fleeing south after the assassination, he ran to stage roles he had played. While being hunted through the cold swamps and woods, he scribbled these words. I am here in despair, and why? For doing what Brutus was honored for. What made William Tell a hero? That's curious, isn't it? And yet, I, for striking down a greater tyrant than they ever knew, am looked upon as a common cutthroat. My action was purer than either of theirs. William Tell's words. Alford gives great, vivid accounts of the murder in Ford's Theater and the manhunt for Booth, who was pursued to a Virginia farm and shot by the Union soldier Boston Corbett. Afterwards, spiritualists circulated the story of a reunion between Lincoln and his killer in the afterlife. Booth at first wanted to fight Lincoln, but then became contrite, regretted his crime, and befriended the president, who forgave him. Tracing spiritualism into the post-Civil War period, Alford describes its brief expansion and ensuing decline. Mary Lincoln remained a believer in spiritualism. She attended seances in which she communed with her husband and her 3 dead sons. 18-year-old Tad Lincoln died in 1871, and she was invigorated after a visit in 1872 to William Mumler, a Bostonian famous for producing spirit photographs for the bereaved. In the picture he made for Mary, her husband stands like a benign ghost, his hands on the shoulders of the round-faced, thin-lipped widow who is dressed in the mourning apparel, mourning M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, that mourning apparel that she wore in her later years. Mary wept with joy over the photograph she was given. Soon thereafter, she gave accounts of an Indian spirit visiting her at night and doing various things to her head. Such delusions were not unusual for spiritualists, but the staid Robert Lincoln, Mary's only surviving son, used this and other symptoms as ground for having her committed in 1875 to Bellevue Place. He had his mother committed to Bellevue Place, an asylum in Batavia, Illinois. Mary's 4-month stay there was uneventful. After her release, she struggled on until her death in 1882. By that time, Alford notes, spiritualism was on the wane, as alternative forms of belief, such as Christian Science, theosophy. That's the word I didn't know what theosophy is.
It's a combination of theology and philosophy.
Okay. Dealing with the mystical apprehension of God?
Yes.
Does that fit?
Yep.
Okay. By the time spiritualism on the wane, as alternative forms of belief such as Christian Science, theosophy, and various social and political causes won adherents. Formerly famous spiritualists went in various directions. Nettie Colburn retired and wrote her autobiography, in which she recounted her experiences as a medium for the Lincolns, Charles Foster, and after a stay in the Danvers Insane Asylum in Massachusetts, died of brain fever in 1885. Is there any such thing as brain fever anymore? Or was there then? There must have been. The Fox sisters turned against the movement they had pioneered, calling it an absolute falsehood from beginning to end, the flimsiest of superstitions, one of the greatest curses that the world has ever known. Mr. Splitfoot, they revealed, referred to sounds they had made by cracking their toe joints under their dresses. In the early 20th century, Arthur Conan Doyle and others tried to revive spiritualism, but Harry Houdini punctured their efforts by demonstrating that spiritualism's apparent miracles could be easily produced by an illusionist. I thought that was interesting. But spiritualism had performed significant cultural work. During America's greatest crisis, it had brought consolation and hope to millions, most critically to the grief-stricken couple in the White House. That is it.
Brain fever is like an inflammation of the brain, the dura mater, and it's pretty common, and it still happens today, like encephalitis. Any kind of swelling of the brain causes problems. They just have strange names for it in the 1800s before they could come up with an actual true diagnosis.
Well, I found all this very interesting, and I hope you did too.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
And we will continue. Let's see if this will actually play. If I can give you the real. This is the children's
Hello, I'm
story.
David Hiskey, and you're watching the Today I Found Out YouTube channel. In the video today, we're looking at how a little girl's letter inspired Abraham Lincoln to grow his beard. In 1860, the clean-shaven Abraham Lincoln was running for President of the United States. This barefaced look was somewhat odd for a man of the age. You see, shortly before Lincoln decided to grow his now famous facial hair, something of a beard illusion swept across the United States, and by the mid-19th century, the formerly predominantly clean-shaven men of America were now nearly universally sporting beards. In fact, one reporter doing a story on the new trend in 1857 walked the streets of Boston, and after counting 543 men that walked by him, found that 62% of them were sporting bushy beards, and all but 4 of the rest had some other type of significant facial hair. And even those 4 that lacked any significant facial hair sported what would later be called sideburns after General Ambrose Burnside. The clean-shaven look that Lincoln at the time was still clinging to was out of style. Needless to say, had Lincoln been running today, his campaign manager would have told him he needed to grow some facial hair, with most of the voting populace sporting it. Instead of a campaign manager, it was a little girl who clued Lincoln in that he needed a change. The girl in question was 11-year-old Grace Bedell from New York, who sent a letter to Lincoln dated October 15, 1860. Dear sir, my father has just come home from the fair and brought home your picture and Mr. Hamlin's. I'm a little girl, only 11 years old, but want you should be President of the United States very much, so I hope you won't think me very bold to write to such a great man as you are. I have yet got 4 brothers, and part of them will vote for you anyway, and if you let your whiskers grow, I will try and get the rest of them to vote for you. You would look a great deal better, for your face is so thin. All the ladies like whiskers, and they would tease their husbands to vote for you, and then you'd be president. My father is going to vote for you, and if I was a man, I would vote for you too. But I will try to get everyone to vote for you that I can. I think that the rail fence around your picture makes it look very pretty. When you direct your letter, direct it to Grace Bedell, Westfield, Chautauqua County, New York. I must not write anymore. Answer this letter right off. Goodbye, Grace Bedell. Apparently not too busy campaigning to answer the letter of a little girl, Lincoln wrote her back from Illinois on October 19, 1860. My dear little miss, your very agreeable letter of the 15th is received. I regret the necessity of saying that I have no daughters. I have 3 sons, one 17, one 9, and one 7 years of age. They with their mother constitute my whole family. As to the whiskers, have never worn any. Do you not think people would call it a silly affection if I were to begin it now? Your very sincere well-wisher, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln had numerous documented instances of self-deprecating jokes concerning his less than attractive visage. In one such instance, while publicly debating with his longtime rival Stephen Douglas, after Douglas called him two-faced, Lincoln reportedly replied, "If I had another face, do you think I'd wear this one?" No, Douglas was not only Lincoln's political rival, but also a rival outside of politics. Lincoln's wife, Mary Todd, was courted by both Lincoln and Douglas originally. In the end, Lincoln perhaps wished he'd lost that battle given accounts of his married life. Given his attitude about his appearance, it's perhaps not surprising, despite not definitively saying he would grow a beard, after replying to Grace on October 19, 1860, Lincoln's facial hair situation progressed as follows.
August, November.
But this isn't the end of the story. On Lincoln's trip from Illinois to Washington, D.C., the now president-elect made a stop at Westfield, New York, on February 19, 1861. On the train platform, he related the story behind his decision to grow a beard and asked if the little girl in question was in the crowd. She was, and approached, at which point, according to Bedell, he said, "Gracie, look at my whiskers. I've been growing them for you." She stated he then kissed her, and she never saw him again. After Lincoln, every elected president except William McKinley would sport facial hair. This trend finally ended when Woodrow Wilson took office in 1913. From then on, U.S. presidents have remained clean-shaven. So thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please click that like button below and also consider subscribing. And do check out our archives. We've got almost 700.
So there's the story of Grace Bedell and Lincoln's beard.
Video.
All right, joys and concerns. As always, Ukraine is at the top of our list. I think up to 40 or 50% of the electrical grid in Ukraine has been destroyed by the Russians. They sent missile after missile after missile, over 100 a couple days ago. 75 were shot down by the Ukrainians, but 25 still are able to, and as fast as the Ukrainians repair it, the Russians blow them out again. That is basically a war crime. Targeting civilian populations is not considered acceptable. But when you come to war, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable? So I'm not sure anything can be done about that.
Tim, I would also light a candle for Emerson's daughter, Amanda, as she recovers and on the road to good health.
Yes, Emerson, his daughter had surgery. I got an email from him. We were talking about the lift, which Emerson is still working on. And it is truly a conundrum. Every avenue he takes, he finds a dead end or a blind alley, and we start down a different path. But anyway, he mentioned that his daughter had surgery on the back of her skull, and that she was, because of the cerebral spinal fluid, and I cautioned him, and I'm sure the doctors follow that advice, that you don't move. You lay flat on your back for at least 2 or 3 hours, because if you sit up too soon and the cerebral spinal fluid drains back out of your brain case, you will have a headache that is unbelievable. It's a splitting headache that never goes away. So I haven't heard anything bad from Emerson, so hopefully the surgery is going well, and hopefully she'll be released shortly. So our thoughts and prayers are with Emerson. Yes?
If you'd also light a candle for my late friend Alice Bathini, 92 years old, and died in the most tragic circumstances on Tuesday evening. And she took care of my mother. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady. So please, everyone, keep, particularly Alice, in your thoughts and prayers.
Okay. Our precautions: get your vaccinations, wear your mask. I'm starting to wash my hands again when I leave the store, because after you handle the baskets or the produce or whatever. Robert Todd Lincoln, the one we talked about, had been saved, the only surviving son, the son who put his mother in the insane asylum. The movie Lincoln that I have, does anybody, I'm trying to think of a date. Do we want to do this probably after Christmas, or does somebody want to do it before Christmas? Just take a Sunday and come to the cottage, and we'll watch the movie Lincoln and have pizza and carry-ins.
Maybe early January would be, depending on weather.
Let's plan on like the 2nd or 3rd week in January tentatively, and we'll firm that up as we go along. Okay.
That would be good.
I think you would enjoy that movie. It shows Lincoln truly in the way he's been described here, as a caring individual who cared about his wife, and his wife was just remarkably upset. Her son Robert, the only surviving son, was desperate to join the military. He was in his 20s, and he's saying, how can I hold my face up in public when all these young men are going to the military and serving their country, and I'm afraid to do it, because his mother wouldn't let him. And Lincoln wouldn't let him either, until finally he said, all right, you can serve in the military. But being the president, he arranged for Robert Todd Lincoln to be the assistant to General Ulysses S. Grant. So he was with Grant, and Grant gave orders for him and basically served as an adjutant. So there couldn't have been a safer place to be. I mean, Grant could always, be the target of an artillery attack or something, but as far as being in a safe place, that was one of the safest places to be. But Mary Lincoln was still tremendously upset because she had already lost 2 sons and was totally just paranoid of losing her 3rd son. And all of us who are parents can kind of sympathize with that. But there is a difference between, not a difference, but there is a gradation of right and wrong and things that you have to do and things that you should do and things that maybe you shouldn't do. And that's one of the choices that people have to make. All right, another candle for all those thoughts, prayers, fears, unspoken desires. If you need help with any of those things, we are here, we are available. Our community might be small, but it's pretty strong. All right, our offering is as usual. Put something in if you can. If you wish to, if you need something, take something out. Okay. Doxology?
She just played it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not Lloyd today.
Yeah, you're not Lloyd today. Yeah, Lloyd is not here today, so we didn't have our music. So, all right. Then we go to our closing hymn is 67. We sing now together. All right. All really good Thanksgiving tunes. And a Thanksgiving picture. Actually, no leaves anymore. The big wind we had last week blew all them down, and the snow that we had last night. Actually, the road trucks, the highway trucks were out, the state trucks were out salting the roads last night because of the snow. The horse parade was last night in Greenville. Pretty good population at the beginning, but they didn't last long because the 20-degree temperature and the wind was probably 30 miles an hour. There were people leaving in droves, and we even left early. My wife did not dress warm enough, and she just couldn't stand it. So, and then we hit the blizzard on the way home. So, interesting night. I may put up a picture of the horse parade next week on our slideshow so you can get some idea of what it's like. Always fun, horses and carriages decorated with Christmas lights, parading through downtown Greenville. All right.
I forgot all about it, my wife didn't remind me.
About the
I would have gone up. I like that one.
I forgot about it also. I read about
I'll
it
be
last
honest.
night.
Well, and I posted something on my Facebook page, and I had people say, we wanted to come, but we didn't come because we knew it was going to be too cold. So a lot of people didn't even come. But it made it nice because we actually went to the Circle. We usually stand on Broadway, and this time we went to the Circle so I could get a backdrop of the decorations. The Greenville Circle decorations are amazing. And we were like at the front of the row. There wasn't any like 3, 4, 5 people deep because of the lack of attendance because of the cold.
Were the stores all open downtown?
Stores were open. It's a Friday night. It's called Friday Night Greenville, but this was on Saturday night. But Romer's Catering, which is right there by the Circle, they had a special thing where you can get a meal and then go watch the parade.
How nice.
All the coffee shops are open. A couple different churches were handing out free hot chocolate. I didn't find where that was because I could have used a hot chocolate. Then maybe they sold out really quick, or they gave away everything they had really quick. But it's a small town community type thing, well attended. Darke County is pretty populous with horses, and the people that do that, I mean, they get nothing for this. They decorate their horses, they bring them into town, they put all those lights on just for an hour's parade around the center so people can watch. It's pretty impressive and pretty enjoyable. And if I can put wheels on my sleigh, maybe next year, if I can get somebody to haul me up there, I don't know if I can make Curly slow down. When you put Curly in the harness, he wants to run, and you can't do that at the fairs or at the parade. So, all right, extinguishing the chalice. Holiday season prayer. We've had a Thanksgiving themed. All of our music has been Thanksgiving themed, and I want everyone to have a good collective community Thanksgiving at home. Thanksgiving brings interesting problems with family. Sometimes it's fun to have family, and sometimes it is a trial and a tribulation to have family. So I hope yours are fun. The beginning of the holiday season is filled with temptations to conspicuous consumption and pleas for generosity. This contrasts between the values represented by this time of the year and our ability to fulfill them, and reminds us how great the distance can be between aspirations and actions. This month has begun with the observation of World AIDS Day, and Human Rights Day follows next week. They remind us of those at home and abroad who are imprisoned by disease, poverty, and discrimination. The messages of liberation, dignity, and joy that come with Hanukkah and Christmas are hard to hear unless they are conveyed by gracious acts of outreach to those who suffer. Our prayer this day is then that we may be gentle with ourselves and with others as we do our best to navigate through the tricky shoals of December. May we avoid being so distracted with our own problems and duties that this year we forget the wider web of life of which we are a part. May we go about our rounds of preparations and festivities with a light heart and boundless patience. May the dissatisfactions that are part of our lot be our companions, but not our masters, as we cross the holiday threshold. May all the joys of the season be ours this time around, and yours. Okay, do you have something for a postlude?
Well, I'm going to play page 354 if you want to follow the words.
All right, good.
And I like the words, so I'll play it once.
354.
354. Now remember, I've not played this for a long time.
We are grateful for any and all music.
Pardon me?
We are grateful for any and all music.
Oh, okay.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer. Very much the theory and the reason for being for this church. All right, this is the last week for the coffee cake. If you don't eat it, Rocky and Rocket gets a little treat at home. But rest assured, there will be something here next week. Well, actually, it won't be next week, because we won't be here next week. Don't forget, we're going to be at El Dorado next week. Bring something if you like, but don't feel compelled to do so. Be safe, wear your mask, wash your hands. The flu season is upon us.
And their service starts at 10:30?
Their service starts at 10:30. I will put a sign on the door. If you would happen to come here, there'll be a sign that says, please go to El Dorado.
Should we put something out for people wanting to hear that can read your phone? I'm just asking.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll put that out.
Mike's going to do it on an email blast, and I'll put something on.
Give you updates.
I'll put something on Facebook. All right.
Good job, good job, good job, all of them.
Everything out of order again, but what the heck?
We're here.
You got to be nimble.
Yeah, 4:30.